I want to talk about the non-sexy stuff, the ups and downs of your hormone healing journey, not just the glamorized parts. There are some people who, depending on their story, depending on their journey and their healing timeline, their body just needs additional TLC. It needs more time. And I want to normalize that. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of She's in Sync, the podcast for women looking to have a safe and confident transition off of birth control. Today, we're going to be talking about expectations of healing your hormones after stopping birth control. But before we do, I'm going to do things a little bit different. Instead of talking about how I'm nourishing myself at the end of the episode, just wanted to be transparent. It's been like a really heavy week, both in the world. Personally, we found out some health stuff is going on with my mom, which it should be a good, it's looking like a good prognosis, but it's still, scary to know someone that you really love is dealing with something, as concerning as what she's dealing with. And I'm very passionate about animal welfare, and I'm in a lot of groups of rescues and part of the Humane Society as my dog gets up and leaves. And there's just been some posts about, really bad situations that dogs have been put in. And it just makes me really, really sad how people treat other humans and other animals. And then the shootings in Minneapolis yesterday. So I feel like it's one of those things where I feel like I want to take a social media detox and like step away from that. But it's really, really hard to do that because it's a huge part of my business and a big part of my job and marketing and, getting the information that I'm really passionate about out there to women. So I feel like that's not something that I can realistically do right now. And so when so much of the news is being shared, it is so heavy and so, bad. It just makes me feel like I'm just in one of those funks, to be quite honest, to be transparent. So that's how I'm, honestly coming on here and just being open about that is really important to me because I think so many times we just are like, how are you doing? I'm great. I'm fine. And for me, I want to be authentic and I want to celebrate in the good and truly say, like, yeah, I'm doing well or things are going great. But then also share with you guys and be a human of when things aren't going well or when I'm struggling to show you that it's okay to be open and honest about those things too. Because I feel like that's when we really connect as humans is yes, celebrating the good, but also being open and honest and supporting each other when things are not so good or when things are feeling heavy like they are for me this week. So that was important to me to get out before this episode. And I had all intentions of recording a different episode, but I didn't have my energy and my mental space wasn't in a space or in a place to do that. So we're going to be talking today about realistic expectations for healing your body after birth control, because I also have a lot of clients right now. I don't want to say a lot, I guess like a couple of them who I've been meeting with this week. And it's just, there must be something in the air. I feel like a lot of us are just in a funk right now. But they are struggling with things not going as planned after coming off of birth control with their healing journey. And so in light of wanting to be open and transparent and authentic, I want to talk about the non-sexy stuff, the ups and downs of your hormone healing journey, not just the glamorized parts. Because yes, do a lot of my clients come off birth control and they have symptom-free periods. They're not painful. They come back right away. Their skin is really, really clear, and they don't have acne flares. 100%, I do. And that's, a huge part of the work they do. And we do together in prepping them to come off of birth control, rebalancing minerals, replenishing minerals, balancing their gut, improving their detoxification systems, working on, revving their metabolism back up and getting that back online after restriction and, all the things that life throws at us. All of those things set us up for success when coming off of birth control. And there are some people who, depending on their story, depending on their journey and their healing timeline, their body just needs additional TLC. It needs more time. And I want to normalize that. I don't want people to, a lot of these women who are going through the messy stages right now, they're really down on themselves and they're having some old intrusive thoughts come up of like, they're broken, things are just going to go back to the way they were. They were feeling better and now it's not. So that's just proof that, all the work they did isn't worth it. And we've been having really, raw and real conversations over the last couple of weeks of this is normal. This doesn't mean you're broken. This doesn't mean it's going to be like it was before. This is your body giving you signals that we're listening to. And we have data to see why this is happening. And we're going to dig deeper. And sometimes your body just literally needs more time to heal. With all the prep work you do, sometimes, it is a big transition coming off of birth control, especially again, given different scenarios. If you've been on it for 10 plus years, if you were put on it for a reason other than pregnancy prevention, depending on your lifestyle, your stress, what's going on in your life, there are so many factors to it. So again, I want to shed light to this. I want to normalize this as that you're not broken. This is normal, because I think sometimes knowing that and having someone say that who's been through it myself professionally, I can tell you my post-birth control breakup journey and my healing journey, even after finding these tools, was not just a straight shot up. It was not linear. It was messy. It was emotionally challenging. And this is where having someone in your back corner and the support, the coaching, the cheerleader, and having the lab data based on your body and having those answers is so, so helpful. So we're going to be covering all of that today. And my promise to you is that I want to break down the emotional stages of healing, normalize setbacks, and show you how to keep going even when it feels hard. And just to reiterate, this is coming from both a professional angle, working with clients, and also personal from going through it myself. So let's go ahead and dive in. I want to start by going over the emotional stages of healing. So think of it as like we've probably heard of like the stages of grief, right? This is the emotional journey with healing, like from a root cause angle, because this is a lot different. We're not comparing this to, you go to your doctor and you're given a prescription medication, AKA let's try birth control. If you're, this will help with your acne. This will help with your painful periods. It's not getting to the root of the issue. So that's why, it might work for that reason, but it's doing greater harm behind the scenes with its mechanisms of how it works. And when you're getting ready to stop, there is so much fear of those things coming back because you've never been given the information or the tools of how to actually heal those imbalances that were leading to acne, painful periods, missing periods, mood swings to begin with. That's something I just want to share. And so when you are starting this process of getting to the root cause, not just take this prescription, it's a Band-Aid. The first phase of healing is initial optimism. You're excited to finally get answers. You are, really excited. You think this is going to work. You've been doing your research. If you are thinking about working with me or you've decided to invest in working with me, for example, you've been probably stalking my content. You've been listening to my podcast. You've been, maybe we hopped on a free call to kind of chat through options and answer any questions. And you're like, okay, this is great. This is it. This girl's different. There's high motivation and you're not thinking, maybe you're thinking a little bit about the roadblocks. Like, I want to be clear, doing the root cause healing, it's an investment emotionally, financially, mentally. And especially if you've done things like this before, or you've worked with functional providers, or you've seen so many doctors, so many, done the programs, you've done a lot of things, there is probably optimism. But then once you make that decision of like, okay, I'm going to do this, I feel confident in this, I'm ready, you know, those things kind of go away because you're so excited. I remember when I did an acne healing program, it was like, I talk about this one a lot. It was a root cause focus, quote unquote. But there was a lot wrong with that. I didn't realize that though, because it was different than what I'd done before. And so I was just like really, really excited. It wasn't going to the dermatologist again and being told like, just go back on birth control or go on Accutane. Like that's all we have to offer you. It was something different and it was a different approach. So I was really excited about that. So initial optimism is excited to get answers. This is going to work. High motivation, low awareness of the roadblocks. The next stage is informed pessimism. So once you get rolling, things maybe aren't as easy as you thought, or there are some roadblocks that come up of like, wait, why is this taking longer than I thought? I was expecting, my skin would start clearing up by now, or my first period after starting all of this stuff would be better, or I get my period back right away by doing XYZ. So your symptoms start to ebb and flow, and you start to kind of question things, and your motivation might dip a little bit of like, should I even do this? Is this worth it? Is this actually going to change things? So then we keep going down this track. So we start really high. If you're watching me, my hand is really high, and then we're going low to inform pessimism. And then a lot of times what happens is we go lower before we go back up. And this is called the Valley of Despair, which sounds really dark and depressing. And quite honestly, it can be. So the Valley of Despair is you're doing everything right. You're following the protocol, you're doing all the things. You're getting your mineral mocktails in, you're doing your supplements, you're taking them to work, on vacation, you're incorporating the recommended foods, you're doing all the things right. But things are not working the way you would like. And when I say the way you like, I'll dive into that a little bit here in a bit. But you have really high expectations and they're not being met. So you start to think, why isn't this working? What am I doing wrong? Frustration with the program, frustration with the provider, frustration and overwhelm, and temptation to quit. So this is when people sometimes start to sabotage, self-sabotage, where they're like, okay, well, if this isn't working, then like, I'm just like, F it. I'm just going to like, skip doing this thing, or I'm not going to be as regimented with my supplements, or I'm gonna go eat. I hate to use this one because I don't want people to feel like they have to eliminate gluten. But like, for example, some people who I test, they are sensitive to gluten. And I recommend eliminating that for a short period of time to heal their gut. A lot of times it doesn't have to be long-term, but let's say that is someone and they are like, well, I'm just going to like have gluten now because like, what's the point? Might as well, since this isn't working. And it's really hard to eliminate gluten, or I just want to be able to go out and eat what I want. So there's a lot of temptation to quit. And, this could also be when doubts start to creep in of, oh, great, I invested in another thing. I spent a lot of money. I spent time. I spent a lot of energy, and it's not working. And I know you've probably tried things before that promise you results and left you disappointed. And honestly, I get that. I get that because I was you. I spent 4 years after stopping birth control searching for answers, trying so many different things to fix my acne and my irregular periods and my anxiety. I went down so many rabbit holes, spent thousands of dollars, and nothing worked. And, what changed was really getting that functional lab data and a plan that was tailored to my body. And that's not cookie cutter. And that's the big thing. So that's something that you might be experiencing right now. But I kind of went off track. Let's keep going with the emotional stages of change. And we'll dive into the Valley of Despair even deeper because that's the hardest one. And I really want to give you tools if you're in that spot now or in the future. So after the valley of despair, we get into informed pessimism, which is you're starting to go up. So you're starting to see some more wins and they start stacking up and your confidence grows and you start to build trust not only in the program again if you're working with someone but in your body, right? You start to see, okay, like things are getting better. XYZ symptom is improving. You start to be okay and notice, okay, like the time was really what I needed, or this tweak is what I needed. And so you start to recognize your body isn't broken. It just needed those tweaks, that refinement, and that time. And this is why, with my highest level coaching, my VIP one on one, I require a minimum of 5 months for people who are ready to go all in because I want to set realistic standards. And to be quite honest, I have a lot of clients who need more time than that to heal. And I'm very transparent about that. And I have extension options that are strategically designed with some retesting so we can kind of check in on things and with additional time for support because we uncover a lot in those initial labs, a lot of things. And so thinking about how long you've been dealing with something and expecting it to change in, 3 months, 5 months, that's a lot of pressure. And that's not usually realistic. Do some people experience that? Heck yeah. And that's awesome. But I would say those are like the smaller 10%. The larger 80%, it's anywhere from like 5 to 8 months, I would say. And then there's another 10% where it's even longer, where this was me, quite honestly, with my acne. There were other things that improved quicker, but my acne really took a lot of time. And I would say it wasn't until about 9 months when I started seeing changes and I still had things to work on. I had to go through, I'm still in my gut healing journey because my gut was an absolute wreck when I did my first GI map. So I'm still going through that, but things are a lot better now and I have answers. So then when we keep going up after informed optimism, we have success and fulfillment. This is when you have created sustainable changes. You might have really consistently clear skin. Your cycles are monthly, they're coming on a monthly basis, they're predictable, and you don't have to think much about it. Your period pain is maybe gone or so much more better, more livable. You're just feeling better. You're seeing lasting, consistent results. So this is like the good part, right? Like the success and fulfillment. And this is oftentimes what social media highlights, right? Because people like the success stories. Like that's buyer behavior, right? Like they want to show that and they also want to showcase those results. And that is something I do, because I want women to know there is a path forward. And again, I do want to shed light in this episode on it's not just black or white of like, it's really, really bad. You get this protocol and then it gets magically better. There's that messy middle. And that's, I want to be realistic with people about it. I keep saying these things, but I really want to hit that home of like, it's not all rainbows, unicorns, butterflies. Like it takes work and there's ups and downs with it too. But eventually, the people who lean into it, who trust the process, trust their body, they get to this success and fulfillment. Everyone's timeline is different with that though. Okay. And again, this is where having that data and that strategic support is so crucial and so helpful because when you start to waver, you can go back to that and you can talk to someone who gets it, who's been through it like myself. And you can go back to, okay, we have answers of like why your body's responding this way. And we can adjust or we can keep going and just allow your body that space and that time to heal. As promised, let's dive into how to deal, how to deal when you're in the valley of despair. Because I'm assuming a lot of you listening to this might be going through this, maybe not. You might be in a different area, but you might be in this valley of despair of like, what the F is happening? Like, why isn't this working? Great. Like, what do I do now? So I mentioned this earlier, but one common thought or belief that comes up is, oh, great, another thing I invested in, I wasted time and money, it's not working for me. And this can lead to the self-sabotage I mentioned of like quitting prematurely, not leaning into support, falling short and not being consistent with the things that you need to be doing or recommended that you do. And so this is where I would truly, recommend getting some one-on-one support with somebody who knows what's going on and can tell you. So functional labs are really important here because you're not shooting in the dark. I think the biggest thing is like the not knowing when and if things are going to change versus if you have that lab data to show you of, okay, my gut is a mess. I have zero good bacteria. I have a high copper toxicity, and that's causing inflammation in my body, which is leading to acne and painful periods. My minerals are tanked from years of under eating, stress, all those types of things. You really can put the pieces of the puzzle together of, okay, I know why this is happening, and it makes it easier. I'm not going to say it makes it easy, but it makes it easier because at least you have answers. And that's where you combine it with the support of having someone who's been through this and who's worked with women with this because I talk to people all the time of like, this is going to take time. This is why we have phases of healing and why, part of my signature coaching program is we have stage 4, which is refinement of time and tweaking things, trying things out, seeing what's working, what's not working, because it's not a straight line, as I've mentioned multiple times. And then, another thing is I'm broken or distrust in your body. And so I want to reframe this doubt as this is a protective mechanism. This is your mind already going to like, okay, well, whatever. Like, I'm just not going to worry about it anymore. Like, this is something that it is what it is. It's almost like that acceptance. But I want to tell you, I've seen clients with decades of acne, women with no periods for years, women with mood swings so intense they couldn't function. They were snapping at their partner, their kids. And finally, when they get these results from the strategic functional lab testing we do, they can stop guessing and they, can use their labs as a roadmap. But was it smooth sailing? Heck no. I want to use my client, Mackenzie, as an example. She's actually going to come on the podcast in a couple of weeks. So you can look forward to her episode where we dive even deeper. But Mackenzie and I started working together about a little less than a year ago. And she was not on birth control, but she had really painful periods, like to the point where she would throw up, pass out at work. Like her life revolved around her period. And the only option her doctors gave her was go on birth control, which she did try, but it took her mind to a very dark place. She had a lot of anxiety, depression on it. And we know your brain reacts to birth control. It has lots of mental health side effects of it. There's lots of research on that. Look at different episodes I've done on that. So she got off of that and she was like, well, I guess like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place of like, I either gotta go back on birth control, which doesn't make me feel great mentally, or I've got to like just white knuckle my way through once a month on my period. And so she was referred by a mutual friend / colleague of mine. And, she was nervous. She was like, I've seen so many doctors, I've seen so many specialists, I've tried so many things. Like she was very nervous to invest in working together because she was like really scared that it wouldn't work. And her mom had really painful periods. Her aunt had really painful periods. It was kind of like it's a genetic type of thing. So when she did make the bold leap to work together, it was a journey. And quite frankly, her first couple of periods, I mean, we uncovered a lot in her labs. We'll talk about this in the episode, but we uncovered a lot of things that led to that showed us the root causes of her painful periods. And they were pretty severe. And so we talked about it, like this is going to take time. And so her first couple of periods were still really not great. She would message me and say, like, I passed out at work, like just keeping you posted. We kind of troubleshooted some things. But then right when she got really consistent with her minerals and her supplements and started incorporating these protocols, after a couple months, her period got better. It, her energy got better. Her sleep was better. And she started to notice like the week before period, her mood wasn't swinging all over the place like it normally did. And then, by month 4 or 5, she messaged me and she was like, oh my gosh, my period is like not painful at all. I didn't have any nausea because she used to get like horrible extreme nausea where she couldn't eat anything. And she's had consistent pain-free periods over the last, 2 to 3, I think it's been like 3 periods. But it didn't start out that way. There was lots of ups and downs, and her body needed time to heal the imbalances we found. But Mackenzie trusted her body. She trusted the process. She leaned into it. We talked about this. I gave her support. I normalized all these things, and she was able to, keep at it even when it was hard, and she reaped the benefits of it. But that's a part of the journey. Okay. Some people it's short amount of time. Some people it's longer. So really working on mindset with this is important. Putting into perspective, how many years were you struggling with this? So going off of Mackenzie's example, she'd been struggling with painful periods for most of her adult life. And again, there was a genetic component of like, this is normalized in my family. Like we all struggle with this. And so we had to reframe of this is going to take time. And think about, I had another client who she was feeling really frustrated with her lack of progress with her skin recently. And so I asked her, like, do you mind sharing like how long you thought it would take or what your expectation was coming in? And she said 3 months. And I was like, okay, that's really good to know. So I know what I'm working with here. And so I shared with her, yes, some people experience it in 3 months, but how long have you been dealing with this? And she's in her mid 30s. And she was like, since high school. And I was like, okay, so if we put this into perspective, expecting your body to fully heal your acne in 3 months when you've dealt with it for 15 years, 20 years, that's not realistic, right? Like cold hard truth, that's not realistic. So we need to set realistic expectations. And I think when you put things into perspective like that, it can really be helpful. Another thing is celebrating what is working. So often our brains go to what's not working, right? My acne isn't healing as fast as I want to. I had a painful period after stopping birth control. My period ghosted me after it came back one time. So what is working? Because it's kind of like the news, like what I was describing, the news, our brains are quicker to go to what's not working, what's bad as a protective mechanism versus what is working. So I'd encourage you to really sit down and think about what has changed, whether it's physical of like, even though my acne, I'm still getting breakouts, like my skin barrier is healing or it looks healthier. My acne is healing faster. When I do get a breakout, it heals much quicker. I know for me, that was a big thing. Like I was still getting quite a few breakouts in my journey up until about 9 months of doing this root cause healing, but they were clearing faster, which was really great. And they weren't as big. Your cycle came back, even if it came back once and then it goes to you after. Okay, like let's use that data. But your body, that was the first step. Your body felt safe enough to ovulate. That's a good sign. Okay, now that's a safety signal. We just need to make it consistently feel safe enough to do it every single month. And then reframing. Setbacks are not a failure. They're a sign that your body is recalibrating. And that is a normal, common part of the healing process, the non-sexy stuff that no one talks about, but that's normal. It's not just a you thing. So like I mentioned, functional labs can also be helpful because they're kind of like your anchor. They're answers. So you're not guessing. And there's something to go back to, especially if you have someone who's like, I'm very, like I want people to understand them. So I do a whole review video of people's labs and send it to them so they can rewatch it too. Because when you're kind of going through it, I used to do it in person. I feel like that's really overwhelming. And I think I've had a better experience and clients have given me feedback. They like the video better because they can like watch it once, watch it twice, watch it 10 million times if they want to and keep going back to it. So when you're in that valley of despair, you can kind of go back to that and, really understand and ground yourself of like, okay, like these are all the things we're working with. And then combine that with what I just talked about of like realistic expectations, how long you've been doing this, what has improved, no matter how big or how small, and, you know, reframing this is not a setback or a failure. It's a sign my body's recalibrating. All of those things can be so, so helpful in that journey. And then reassurance that if you do have a personalized protocol and someone who's refining that and changing that for you, it's that is the game changer. Again, you're just working with the time frame, which oftentimes isn't as quick as what we'd want, but that's what's going to produce lasting changes versus a quick fix, take birth control to fix this, but it's not actually going to fix things in the long run. So it takes mental and emotional energy to do this root cause healing. And when you come off birth control, there can be a lot of expectations, a lot of fear. And so if it's not perfect, it can be, it can really throw people for a loop, which is why we're talking about this. And we talked about support, but, healing sometimes can be, especially with this root cause journey, it can be really isolating. Not a lot of people are talking about this. Not a lot of people are talking about this. And so I'm having conversations with my clients right now, and I'm like, bring this to me because I get it. Like I have clients tell me that their partner doesn't get it. Like they're very supportive, but they just they don't have acne. So they don't understand the emotional, how it wrecks your confidence and how it can emotionally impact you. Their partner doesn't really understand, how to cycle sync or how to do fertility awareness method. And so they're feeling like they're doing it on their own. And so when they, when their client or when their partner wants to have sex, but they can't because they don't want to get pregnant, it can just be a hard conversation and just a learning curve. And so healing solo can feel really isolating. And so having support of a provider or another woman who's gone through it and figured it out is so, so helpful, or who's just going through it with you and who, you can just chat with. So I had a client of mine who mentioned I should have a Facebook group for women who have stopped birth control and who have worked with me. And I was like, that's a really good idea. I'm going to put a pin in that. I don't have the capacity to manage that right now, but I would love to have a network of women who I've worked with and just have them support one another. And I think that's so important. So if you're going through this, I just want you to know it gets better, but sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. And if you have that lab work, if you have a customized protocol, if you are working with someone who has a proven process and you can lean into that and trust your body first and foremost, it will work out. But that's where you have to make sure you're getting the right support and not guessing, because the guessing is really what prevents people from, sticking with it, which no doubt, right? Because you don't have the answers. You don't know what's going to help. So to recap, healing has its phases. The valley of despair is the hardest, but it's also the most transformative if you can get through it. And if you're in the valley, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're in the process. You're in your healing journey. I've been saying that a lot to my clients recently of this is a part of the healing journey. This is the messy part. You're in it now. You got this. It won't be forever. So if you are a woman who is, thinking about stopping birth control and you're terrified of your face breaking out, worse than high school, of painful periods coming back, of your period ghosting you, of mood swings, and you're not quite sure what to do next, maybe this is all new information to you, then check out my free my free break up with birth control masterclass. It's a mouthful sometimes. That's a great first step to get information of how, what labs to run, real client examples and stories. I show their labs and I'm very transparent and open about their cases, and what we did to heal their hormones naturally prior to coming off birth control. And, it's also a really great space to learn more about how your body works and root causes of symptoms that birth control masked and how to heal them naturally. So there's that resource for you. Or if you're ready to take action, you are done sitting on the sidelines, you're ready for one-on-one support, I do have multiple options of working one-on-one together to have a safe transition off birth control. Or if you've already stopped and you are going through it it's a hot mess express, then I'd invite you to book a no pressure one-on-one call. We can chat about what your symptoms are, what your health history is, what your goals are, and decide if working together is the right fit or not, and which program would be, the best place for you. Hopefully this was really helpful. Hopefully, I'm hoping next week I have a better week. I'm hoping that you have a good week this week if you're in the same kind of funk, a good week next week. And as always, if you like the show, please share a review, connect with me on YouTube, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review on Spotify. It really, really, helps grow the show and it makes me so appreciative. I love reading them and seeing them. So until next time, everybody, stay nourished.